Hello and welcome back into Jacket Sports Weekly. It's been a little bit since we've been back here on JSW, as last week ended up having fall break and the week before took a week off because of midterms, but we are now back in action, and the past couple of weeks haven't been good weeks for the Waynesburg University sports teams on campus, whether that's the football team, the men's and women's soccer teams, or the volleyball team. I'm Riley Holsinger, joined alongside Caleb Yager here on Jacket Sports Weekly. And Caleb, last week for the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets wasn't a really good week for them.
And starting off with football, it really wasn't a good week for them as well. Waynesburg was playing against the Westminster Titans, and Westminster got on the board first. They went up 3-0 early. But then Waynesburg came back with a touchdown, a sneak in by Josh Gibbons, who had 83 yards on the day. Not really much of a passing game for Josh Gibbons, but then after that, it was 56 unanswered points, and the Westminster Titans just took over. And also, the Waynesburg special teams really struggled that day. They had 3 blocked punts against the Mason Mangum, not having a good day.
Yeah, and you might be asking right now, why was Josh Gibbons in that game? Well, since we didn't get to cover that Grove City game and the 38-0 loss against Grove City, Tyler Raines, the starting quarterback, ended up being taken out of that game. And Waynesburg in that game also without its starting running back, Justin Flack, too. And you mentioned it, special teams not good. Not only the 3 blocked punts, but a kickoff return for a touchdown and a punt return for a touchdown from the Titans as well. Moving over to women's soccer, 5-7-1 on the year, but over the last 7 games, they are 1-5-1. That's since September 18th. The team had a hot start to the year, Caleb. 4-2 to start off the year, but then they lost a lot of steam in conference play.
In conference play, they are 1-4-1 so far, and against Westminster, it was a rough day. I mean, Westminster is, granted, a very good soccer team. Westminster now is undefeated in conference play, and they're 12-1-1 on the season. But the biggest stat line from that day was Westminster outshot Waynesburg 42-5 on the day. I mean, and that just can't happen. You gotta. Soccer is about getting shots on goal, and the more shots that you get on goal, the better opportunities for goal scoring there will be. But if you only get 5 shots versus 42, then who do you think is going to win that game?
Yeah, and most of the games, too. Autumn Blair has been a fantastic goaltender so far for the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets, only allowing 1.69 goals per game. And most of these games that the Lady Jackets are losing out there are 1-0 or like 2-1 scores. So the women's team is in a lot of these contests, but they're unable to win most of these, and partly because of what you said, not being able to get a lot of shots on goal there. Allison Johnson, she's been a great player over the course of her freshman year. Leah Holtz and Emily Redmond are having some pretty solid years with 6 and 7 points respectively as well. And then the other team on the pitch right there, the men's soccer team, 1-12 on the year, but it's been a rough stretch for the men's soccer team right now. Hasn't won since September 8th against La Roche, and they are on a 11-game losing streak, Caleb.
11-game losing streak. I mean, it's been a tough road for the Yellow Jackets. They played against Westminster in a doubleheader as well, and they were outshot 20-8 in the game. But they were in the first half. Westminster only outshot Waynesburg 6-4, but then Westminster got 14 shots in the second half versus Waynesburg's 4. And they're obviously last in the PAC, have not won a conference game yet. But the thing that I've noticed with the team is they've had these good opportunities. They can develop plays well, but it's just the fact of turning over the ball pretty easily. Just a one simple pass that can be intercepted by the opposition, and then these teams have just a little more discipline and they can create more offensive opportunities.
Yeah, and just a few weeks left for the Waynesburg men's soccer team, and that word develop that you used right there, that's going to be a big word for anybody who follows Waynesburg men's soccer to keep an eye on, because this is a really solid freshman class and a solid sophomore class for this men's soccer team. You have Connor Jacobs, Seth Masadi, you have Logan Gonzalez, Logan Karate, and Sean Ormsby. So we're kind of at maybe the light at the end of the tunnel within a year or two here. This is a team that can compete down the line. So moving over to the Waynesburg women's volleyball team here, the volleyball team 9-15 on the season, but they're in a little bit of a rough stretch as well, Caleb, just like the men's soccer team.
They have lost their past 5 matches, and 3 out of those 5 they've lost 3-0. And most recently they took on the Bethany Bison, a very, very tough Bethany Bison team, one of the top few teams in the conference. But it was better overall, even though they lost 3-0. it can be kind of deceiving when you look at these sets individually. Waynesburg was outscored 25-19 and then 25-20 in the second and 25-20 in the third, which was much better from the first time they played them at home, where they didn't even get to 20 points. I mean, I think the most that they got was maybe 15. So it was a lot better effort in those games, and it's just been a struggle in the conference. They're 3-11. The Waynesburg Yellow Jackets are right now. They're 9-15, which is a lot better than they have been in past years, but like I said, it's been a 5-game losing streak. They're trying to get back on track.
Yeah, strong start to the season for the volleyball team here. Just been rough as of late. One of the highlights, though, in that little bit of a rough patch right there, Allison Johnson ended up getting 1,000 digs for her collegiate career here. Just a glorious milestone from her. She's been doing an amazing job here over her time at Waynesburg University. But when we come back right here on Jacket Sports Weekly, we'll be joined by Austin Bechtold to talk more about Waynesburg football.
Jacket Sports Weekly on WCTV, and now we're going to talk about Waynesburg football. And here to break down football for us is our football analyst, Austin Bechtold. And Austin, it's been a struggle for the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets, not only offensively but defensively as well.
It has. Good to be with you guys. Just an absolutely really abysmal performance for the football team against Westminster. And you mentioned earlier in the show just the fact that this team kind of came out and was okay, had the lead against the Titans, and then just completely and utterly unraveled. And part of that, I think, is not having Tyler Raines in there to really rein in the offense, no pun intended, if you will, and just be able to put some structure between it. And we haven't really seen this team show much in terms of offense after he's gone out, and which used to be a Waynesburg team that was heavy defense last couple of years, offensive heavy this year, and now just looking for answers.
Yeah, and it's just really tough not having Tyler Raines out there, just like how you mentioned there, because Josh Gibbons threw a really costly interception there in the second quarter in the end zone. It was really the turning point in that game that kind of swung that momentum, if you'd like to say, from Waynesburg in that game as a possible underdog and trying to make an upset there to Westminster just completely taking over in that game. But how much does it also hurt Waynesburg not having Justin Flack available for that game, too?
I think it's huge. I mean, Flack is just one of the main catalysts of this team offensively in general. Even when you're not able to have that much success with Tyler Raines, some play-action game, you're going to be able to have some success because of the ability that Flack has, the running back from the Derry area, just the ability that he has to just go pound per pound through the offensive line and just have a bunch of toughness. And he shows his skill set on really every single time that the Waynesburg offense is out there. He's really the go-to guy other than Dakota Romantino on the outside. And not having Flack also just as a mentor in the backfield and as a leader for this offense, especially without Raines, it just kind of piles on to not having your quarterback, your running back, and also Romantino a little banged up as well. Nothing has been really helping. Waynesburg hasn't gotten any gifts, if you will, in terms of how this team can be helped in getting another W after a big losing streak that they're on right now.
And over the past couple of games, too, I mean, it's been pretty admirable. We haven't had the chance to talk about this on Jacket Sports Weekly, but Dakota Romantino going out there and able to play with a cast on, and he's just not being a decoy out there. He's still being a very productive receiver. I mean, he had 5 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown on Saturday. Now, 51 of those 85 yards came off of one grab by him, but how admirable is that Romantino's able to go out there and play with that cast on and a broken wrist?
I think it's great, especially even new to the program as well. It just shows dedication, it shows toughness. It really is, I think, for the teammates as well, Romantino, just kind of you kind of just say, wow, and you're impressed by that. The fact that this guy wants to go out there and battle with the guys no matter what type of injury that he may have. it's really the selflessness, I think, of Romantino and just laying his body on the line, knowing that he could even potentially injure it even more.
As a simple question for you, Austin, should they target Romantino more?
Well, I mean, when you don't really have a running game as well, I think you don't have that much of an option. This is a team that's 8th in scoring offense, only putting a little bit over 20 points a game on the board. Part of that is the defenses that they've faced, but not having Reigns back there as well, do you really trust the offense to be able to get the ball to Romantino? Maybe some bubble screens, maybe some quick slants over the middle. You got to give him the ball in space, and he's going to be able to make some more plays, but what option do you have other than that, especially if Flack's not going to be able to go next week?
Yeah, and the defense in rough shape right now too. One of the bottom defenses when we're talking about the President's Athletic Conference. What do you think is going to be one of the things that they need to shore up for this week's game against St. Vincent College, which is going to be a pretty tough game for the Yellow Jackets once again?
It's the pass defense. Waynesburg is 9th overall in total defense and 9th overall in passing defense. Really just gotten shredded passing-wise by other teams, and it's not going to help whenever you're facing some of these offenses like St. Vincent and eventually down the road in the last game of the year, W&J, who's been prolific throwing the ball this season. Lots of different receivers there, but I really think that for the defense, it starts with stopping the pass and really just honing in on just your skill players on defense and trusting what you got. And, the offense has not been able to help out with, in special teams as well. The special teams is 8th in kickoff return average and 9th in punt returns, only averaging 2 yards per return punt-wise. That's also 9th. A lot of bottom-tier rankings in the PAC for this team, and that's just where Waynesburg is right now, especially for a team that's 1-5 overall, 1-4 in the PAC on a 3-game losing streak, 0-3 at home. Things are really unraveling. Injuries are piling on, and the defense really hasn't seen as many injuries as the offense, but isn't getting bailed out as well.
And he briefly mentioned the special teams unit. They had 3 blocked punts against them on Saturday. What do you make of that?
I mean, I don't know how that happens. I really don't. You'd think, first time, shame on you. Second time, you can't get fooled again in terms of punt blocks. And then a third time, it's not unbelievable. It's a word that's kind of frowned upon here in the comm department. But it's unreal to see. I mean, how as a special teams unit do you have 3 punts blocked? I don't think I've ever seen that in a game before. And why not just change something up? I don't know. It's also just a part of how these games are becoming really lopsided in the second half and just how things spiral out of control, and it just adds to that. And I don't know if the demeanor is just down in the second half for the team. I would think that you'd be able to just get a simple punt off, but there's definitely just things in every aspect, all 3 assets of this team that needs to improve, and we haven't seen that much of an improvement, especially in the past couple of weeks, to make you feel like going down the home stretch they can pick up another W or 2.
Yeah, and Westminster are able to also capitalize in the return game as well with a punt return for a touchdown and a kickoff return for a touchdown. But when we come back right here on Jacket Sports Weekly, we'll have Joe Venzel to talk about men's soccer.
It's a Saturday night. You know what that means. Time to party. Sam is having a good time, watching sports, drinking beer, playing Pong. Not a care in the world for Sam. Nobody at the party stopped Sam. They let him walk out the door with his keys, even though he was stumbling, having a hard time to stand up. What happened less than 10 minutes later would change Sam's life forever.
The men's soccer team is 1-12 on this season. Joe Venzel is our men's soccer analyst. He'll be joining us right now on Jacket Sports Weekly. And it's not really the season that the men's team really would have wanted, Joe, but they still can take some stuff away from it developmental-wise. And there's a lot of young players on this team, so how important is it for a lot of those young players to get meaningful collegiate action so far?
Oh, very important, Riley, especially honing back to the W&J game on the 13th. Sean Ormsby and Logan Karate. Ormsby had 4 shots total in the game, 2 shots on net, and Karate 3 shots total in that game and 2 on net. And if you're going to produce the way that this Waynesburg team does, they produce really good shots and really good looks. And especially with this young team, if you have those productions and have those effectiveness, you get those in the back of the net, you can really see a turnaround coming into these next years, especially coming into the end of the season as well. Get a couple wins against some really high-ranked teams and really put together a really good finish to the season moving forward. I feel like that's going to be very important for this team.
What do you think have been the contributing factors for this Waynesburg men's team to, even though they may be in a lot of these games, like they recently played W&J, but they lost 2-1, but they lost against Westminster 5-1 on Saturday. What are some of the things that are contributing to these losses?
Especially I want to hone in on Westminster, 5-1 to the second team in the PAC, mind you, but a tough start for Waynesburg, going back and forth 1-1 in the beginning of the game, both teams exchanging, but you lose that lead, going into the end of the 45th minute to the next half. It really changes the aspect of the game fully, and especially with a good team like that, letting them get those open looks and scoring very well, it's going to be very tough, especially against a high-ranked team like that, like I said, like Westminster. But going in forward with that, don't have the right defense, don't make the right plays, it's just not going to be a good game for, any aspect of that matter.
Yeah, it's just a really tough conference right now in the President's Athletic Conference. I mean, Waynesburg does have some pieces to put together at least a decent team out there, but this conference is just something else, Joe.
Absolutely, and especially, very tough being at the bottom of the barrel, ranking 10th, but you have your Franciscan at number 1, Westminster number 2, Grove City at number 3, and Chatham at number 4. The top 3 teams, 2 of them 6-0 in PAC play, and Grove City 5-1. It's very tough. And especially if these teams are not losing in the PAC doesn't really get very competitive anymore. It makes it really tough for those low-ranked teams to make a statement when you have those powerhouses like Westminster, like Grove City, and like Franciscan. So it does make it really hard, but I do like to see the competitive play still with them being the underdog, Waynesburg and any other team in that aspect, showing what they can do against these really good teams, especially making good plays, putting shots on net, unfortunately not going into the back of the net.
1-12 on the season, 0-6 so far in conference play, and looking at the President's Athletic Conference playoffs, which are maybe coming up pretty soon here, kind of a bleak chance, to be honest, for the Waynesburg Yellow Jackets. But what are some of the things that you think that they can do in order to finish out the season as strong as possible?
Well, going into next week, this week I should say, Wednesday playing St. Vincent, should have a very good game. St. Vincent 9, us 10, going to be a very good game, especially with the statement, beat St. Vincent, the team above you, make a little bit of a run going into the end of the season, have some momentum, get a really good, stable group together, see what they can do in the future. So.
All right, thank you, Joe Venzel, our soccer analyst right here on Jacket Sports Weekly. When we come back, we'll have Tyler Zeman to talk more about the women's soccer team.
Although the men's soccer team is 1-12 on the season, the women's soccer team for Waynesburg is 5-7-1, 1-4-1 in conference play. And here to break down women's soccer for us is our soccer analyst, Tyler Zeman. And Tyler, it was a shutout against Westminster. They were on the wrong side of the shutout, the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets were. And to say they were outshot is a bit of an understatement.
Yeah, well, 42 total shots for Westminster in a game that ended with only 4 goals for the Titans. The Yellow Jackets are just lucky to survive that game, only conceding 4 goals, and it really comes down to Autumn Blair, who made 19 total saves. When you have a goalkeeper who can make 19 total saves, that is just a great starting point for next season. But for the rest of this season, they're really going to have to start to hunker down defensively and try to find a way to redirect or just stop giving 42 total shots or enough looks to the other team, which would lead to those shots.
Yeah, and facing 44 shots, that's more of something that you'll hear from a goalie in hockey. So Autumn Blair's been able to really keep this women's soccer team in a lot of these games so far this season. How big has it been that she's been giving them a chance, like game in and game out? Because a lot of these scores where Waynesburg's losing, it's either going to be 1-0 or 2-1 or 2-0.
Yeah, well, I mean, she kept them in the W&J game, which they played last Wednesday. That game ended up in a 0-0 tie. It took 2 overtimes for that game to finally come to an end. But she only had to make 3 saves, but I mean those were big 3 saves, to keep W&J off the board. Waynesburg, they dominated that game offensively. They just couldn't find the back of the net. But right now, Autumn Blair, she's really stepped up for a defense that has really been struggling, which is kind of surprising because defensively they are very, very experienced. And for them to be struggling like this, it's kind of just, shocking.
For offensively for Waynesburg now, Haley Johnson has been the leading goal scorer for the Waynesburg Yellow Jackets. Can you kind of describe her impact for Waynesburg?
Yeah, well, Haley Johnson coming in as a freshman, she has really stepped up offensively for the Yellow Jackets. So far, 6 goals this season. She's really been the only offensive player to really produce for the Yellow Jackets. And for the Yellow Jackets right now, struggling offensively, struggling defensively. She's really been, their star player in the field of 10, minus Autumn Blair.
And how disappointing is it that a lot of these solid players for this Waynesburg women's soccer team who have a lot of experience have been really struggling out here to contribute offensively or defensively?
Well, I think, with a new head coach, the first season's always going to be a little bit of a struggle, chemistry-wise and whatnot. For Haley Johnson, who's a freshman just coming in, this is just the culture that she's kind of walked into. So it's not that, other than getting used to college life and all that, it's not too big of a step in the game. But for all these seniors that have played under a different head coach and in different formations and with other players that have now gone and they're the leaders of this team, that's a big role to fill. Especially for a team that has struggled the past couple of seasons.
And as a final question to wrap up, Tyler, what are some of the things that Waynesburg can do to kind of finish up this season as they've only got a few conference games left?
Yeah, well, I mean, looking right now, I think defensively is where you got to look. Try to figure something out. Going into next season. So, they can be a bit more prepared because right now it's, you're not really going to be able to turn anything around.
Thank you, Tyler, for your analysis on the women's soccer team. But don't go anywhere. When we come back, Tanner Saprowski is going to sit down with an exclusive Waynesburg University athlete.
Back here on Jacket Sports Weekly, I'm Terrence Saprowski, and today for the interview section, I'm joined by senior volleyball player Allison Johnson. Allison, thank you for joining me today. We'll just jump right into it. This season, you have almost as many wins combined as the last 3 seasons in total. What's kind of been the difference that you've seen from the team?
Definitely the change in our culture. We came in at the beginning of the season focused on changing that to start because that's more of a foundational thing for us. And then going out from there, we were a more positive team. We supported each other better, and we just came together as a whole rather than playing more individually. So definitely changing that made a difference.
You've played under 2 head coaches, a couple of different assistant coaches. What's it been like for you kind of playing through this revolving door of coaches throughout your career?
It definitely has its ups and downs. I mean, you come in as a freshman and you already have the pressure of trying to prove who you are, but then you have another head coach come in and you're like, oh, I have to prove myself again. So, I mean, it can be a little stressful at times, but when Coach Taylor came in, it definitely changed the way that volleyball was here. So it was more of a positive change than being stressed out about a new coach coming in.
And of course, we have to touch on September 25th, you reached your career total of 1,000 digs, and to make it even better, it came against W&J. What was that moment like for you being on the court whenever you hit that milestone?
It was awesome. I really didn't know when I hit the actual 1,000th dig. They announced it when we were in a timeout, and I knew going into the day that I was going to be pretty close, but I tried not to think about it because you know that can alter how you play. But it was a great feeling with everyone being there supporting me. My dad came and surprised me at the games, and it was just an overall good feeling knowing that I've worked so hard throughout my life to reach a cool goal, and being able to reach this one, it was just awesome.
So that happened on September 25th. Forward to September 28th, you set a new school and PAC record with 59 digs just in one match. What does that mean to you that your name is at the top of a list of everybody who's ever stepped foot on the court in the entire conference?
Pretty awesome. I was a little bit shocked, I guess. Like when people were telling me, I was like, oh yeah, like that's cool, but like I don't really like to talk about myself. So then again, like I'm like, oh, thank you so much. But I mean, it's a great honor to be at the top. Like, you know, you come in, you practice, you play, and you just aren't thinking about it. But then when you take a step back and people recognize that and congratulate you for what you've accomplished, it's an awesome feeling.
And top off that amazing September that you had, you were named the female SAAC Scholar Athlete of the Month for September. How do you balance having such good grades while being able to compete on the court at the same time?
Time management, knowing that I have to be here at this time and I have this much time in between class and practice. So just really scheduling out my week when it starts is how I try to balance. I try to cram as much work in as I can on the bus if I can do it, or just any small time that I have, I try to take advantage of just to get things done and stay on top of it.
If you have one, what do you think has been the biggest challenge between sports and academics that you've went through so far in your career?
This year especially, I'm a bonner also, so juggling community service, and then this year for athletic training I have clinical hours that I have to achieve, and then just school and practice and games all together. This one's definitely been my trickiest year, but everyone's been supporting me and been super helpful throughout the entire semester, so it's pushed me to get through it. It's challenging, but I'm making it. We're almost there.
And unfortunately, it's senior year. You're going to be graduating, moving on. What do you want your legacy to be at the school and for the team whenever you leave?
Dang, that's a good question. Just being as positive and uplifting that you can be for your teammates. One of my favorite things to do is cheer. Obviously, everyone always says, oh, you're always jumping around on the court, all of that. And I just want to be remembered by being the best teammate that I could be, no matter what I was accomplishing individually. I don't know, I want everyone to support their teammates the way that everyone should, and for all their accomplishments, and come together as one, I guess, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it's a good positive answer, a good positive way to end this interview. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you again for joining me. Whenever we come back, Riley and Caleb will break down their top 5 plays of the week.
Welcome back to New Jacket Sports Weekly. It is now time for our top 5 plays of the week, and let's jump right into it. Women's soccer versus Westminster here. Allie Hall, and Mom, get the camera. Look at that nice move there by Allie Hall. More from this game coming up shortly.
Number 4, men's soccer against Westminster. Samuel Hawkins, in and out, gets past his defender. Take a look at that again. Whew, right foot, that's nasty.
Play number 3 here. Football versus Westminster, and Sean Hitler, TJ Watt on the strip sack right there. Take a look at it once again. Javion Smith able to recover the strip sack there. Men's team lost 66-14.
Number 2, women's soccer. Diving save by none other than the junior goalkeeper, Autumn Blair. Dives to the right side, prevents a goal from happening, but women's soccer loses 4-0.
Don't have footage of this one, but still impressive. Luke Deal, hole-in-one at the President's Athletic Conference Championships. Yeah, Caleb, I can't even hit a hole-in-one in mini golf.
Yeah, if you were to ask me to play mini golf, I can manage my way. But if we're talk about regular golf, like don't even. I would make a top 5, not top 5 plays for Jacket Sports Weekly. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have today on Jacket Sports Weekly. For Riley Holsinger and Caleb Yager, thank you for tuning in.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.